That is the rule of all rock bands. When you ask the drummer to play just by himself, every musician runs in the room and plays at the same time. Here we are, ready to rock. Sunset Sound, Studio 2, with the boys from Wildling. We're going to show you how we built a track from the ground up. So my primary guitar sound is this Vox AC30. That's really going to give me all the grit and character. Home is where I wanna be. Pick me. We have 3 microphones up, and we kind of go back and forth depending on what the song is, the intimacy or the bigness of the song. Hey Ryan, I want to hear a little bit of you singing on that Sony C37A for a moment. All right. The less we say about it, the better. Make it up as we go along. Feet on the ground. Where is the setting on the bass distortion pedal? Is that knob all the way up, the input knob on the left?
No, it's one notch above all the way.
Let's go all the way.
Let's go all the way, Joe.
Oh God.
That's all the way, baby.
Home is where I wanna be, but I guess I'm already there.
So, microphones on drums. Here's what we got going on. Pretty standard stuff, couple of twists, but pretty standard. On the toms, Sennheiser 421s, classic, but they always do the job. I really like the old-fashioned ones that have the silver ring. I always think they sound better. That's just a little tip for you. New ones seem to be a little brighter, perhaps, but these classic ones last, including the dents that are on the top of the mic from drumsticks, but they really do work well for me on toms. They just have enough sort of mid-range projection that they're a really great tom mic. Snare drum. Pretty classic thing, Shure SM57, AKG 451 microphone, condenser. I take the 2 of them, blend them together. The Shure gives me my mid-range. I get the top and bottom from the AKG. And then I do have a bottom mic on the snare as well. I have a 441 Sennheiser. I love that on the bottom. That's got a lot of top end and bottom end to me. So I get the rattle of the snares, but I also get some depth to the snare drum as well. One thing that's really important to me is the angle of the microphones. I like to get them pointed at where the drummer hits the skin. Just that point of concussion is really important to get the clearest transient to me. So you can see the mic is kind of pointed at the center of the drum. So on the bottom snare mic, which is a 441 Sennheiser, I like it because it captures a good amount of snare sound as well as low end. You get a lot of low end off the bottom of the snare. You can really, really add a lot of depth to the snare drum. Sometimes even a microphone close to the floor is great for adding size to a snare drum. So the 441 really helps me. But again, it's very important the angles. So what I do to match the mics as best possible is the angle that I have the top mic pointed at, I match the bottom mic. So they're looking like this with the snare drum in between. Hi-hat, I'm really looking for the clarity of eighth notes, the transient, the point of attack, if you will. So you can see my hi-hat microphone, which is a Neumann KM84, is pointed at the spot on the hi-hat where he hits with his stick. Overheads. For this session, we're using old Sony C37A tube microphones. They're pretty warm sounding. They actually have a dip in the mid-range, but an extended top end. So they get a little bit of the clankiness of the cymbals out of there. The cymbal tends to be a little warmer with them, I found. A little bit more air, a little less metallic sounding. And again, I pointed at where the stick hits the cymbal. I'll vary the distance. I'll move it a couple of times while I'm getting drum sounds to find the perfect spot that picks up enough toms, snare, and overall kit, but gives me the definition of cymbals. And again, when I get in the control room, I'm very conscious of phase. so I'm always flipping the overheads in and out of phase to see which one adds up the best with the kit. Okay, kick drum. I do 3 mics usually for a rock setup like this. Inside mic, an outside mic, and then I do a sub-kick mic as well. This is a sub-kick mic that's got a NS10 style woofer built into it. My inside mic is an AKG D12. It's still my all-time favorite kick drum. It seems to have a really fat bottom and a nice slap attack. A lot of the modern drum mics that are meant for drums and have a built-in EQ curve, I find them a little fake sounding for me, so I love the D12. That's my go-to inside mic. For outside of the mic, here we're using a Neumann 47 FET. It seems to capture the size of the drum, the bigness, the tone, the skin. And the subwoofer, of course, is doing just that. It's picking up all that low resonance. So those all get summed together just like the snare drum mic gets summed together to one track of Pro Tools. So now we have some of the room mics. We have a number of room mics placed around the room and some close to the kit. The first mic is my mono drum mic. Sometimes I'll just use that as one mic over the kit, but in this case, because I want a lot of the, he's doing a busier, funkier groove in the song, so I want a lot of the detail, I want a lot of the snare rattle and roll. So I'll put one microphone here, sometimes I'll put it in closer to the snare, but I usually have best luck with it out at the rim of the drum. And I like a big diaphragm mic. I've used M49s. In this case, we're using a tube Neumann 47, but 87s work. A lot of other things work really well there. And this will get heavily processed in the control room and be on a separate track in Pro Tools. Then part of my room sound is a close room mic that's a stereo ribbon here, plus we have various other mics around the room. The close ribbon is a AEA R88 stereo ribbon mic, and it's 2 figure-8 patterns, and this gets blended into my room sound mix, my stereo room sound track. This is going to be good 50-60% of my room sound because it really has a lot of the thick bottom that's close to the drums. It gets some of the reflections from the side because these are figure-8s, and it'll get compressed a lot, so it gets a lot of oomph to the kit, a lot of thickness to the drum sound. That's my main room mic here, and the distance will vary depending on the room. If the room is very wet and very live, it'll come in. If I can get away with it, maybe 2 or 3 feet back, it'll be further back from the kit. So it really depends on the sound I'm looking for and how bright the room is. Okay, so my other room mics are scattered around the room. I have one mono trash mic, I call it. It's a very lo-fi Altec salt shaker mic. Has just a lot of mid-range, not a lot of bottom, not a lot of top. Kind of makes everything sound very grainy, very lo-fi, almost like instantly like a drum loop. It's really got a lot of character to it. So I use that to get the mid-range clack in the room, to get that sort of excitement happening with the snare drum. And that's going to be in the middle of the room and up high. And then, depending on how big the room is, how wet I want the drum sound, I'll have a pair of U87s back in the room. For this song, I want the rooms to be just a little bit of noise, a little bit of excitement. We're matching a drum loop that the band created with some samples, so I have a sense of what that sound wants to be. So my far room mics will get processed, they'll be heavily compressed, probably roll off some low end, and they'll just be there for the edge and the excitement and the crackle, if you will. So my far rooms are 287s at the back wall, and those will be my excitement mics. They'll get blended into my drum mix just a little bit depending on the song and the character that I'm looking for. And the one mic that you can't see now is I have a very lo-fi mic that I put down by the kick drum pedal. It picks up all the rattle of the snare, it picks up the attack of the kick drum beater, it gets processed heavily. It becomes my distortion device. It gives me a lot of crack on the snare, a lot of poke on the kick drum, and it brings a lo-fi distortion to the drums that I'll just gently blend in with everything. If you guys need more info on my particular method of drum miking, we did a drum video here with Joey Warrenker, who's a great studio drummer. We did it here some months ago. It's online. Check it out. I'll be talking about all this stuff just in a little bit more detail. Okay, we're in the bass closet, Sunset Sound. We have an SVT amp, and I always do 2 mics on the amp, one close, one far away. Bass always takes some distance to build up, and I find you get more character when you can back the mic off. Ideally, I'd like to get that room mic in a place maybe 8 to 10 feet from the amp where I find the bass just builds up and develops nicely, has a lot of growl, has a lot of low-end sustain. This closet is all we've got, but I still find that mic comes in handy. So that'll be maybe 40% of my bass amp sound. I've got a close mic, in this case an RE20, right up on the speaker. I usually mic it at the spot where the center of the cone meets the rest of the paper, so not directly in the center, but off a few inches. And then my room mic, I aim for usually the middle of the overall cabinet between the speakers. I don't necessarily line it up with my close mic. So in this case, we have an 87, about 5 feet back from the cab, and it'll add some growl. Okay, electric guitar. We're in the ISO booth here. With Eric's setup, I'm using 2 amps. He's got a very lush part that comes in the second verse of the song. I want it to be nice and wide and stereo. So what we've done is set up 2 amps. They are very different in tone. There's a Vox AC30 that's his main amp, and there's an Ampeg Rocket that's his secondary amp. The Rocket has a lot of, it's smaller on the bottom, has a lot of mid-range projection, rather tight, dry, dampened sound. That's going to be a smaller portion of my overall guitar sound, but it's going to help bring the guitar forward and wider in the track. So that I just mic with a 57 because that's really my secondary sound. So my primary guitar sound is this Vox AC30. That's really going to give me all the grit and character and punch. I do 2 microphones, a 57 and a Royer 121 ribbon blended together on one track through one bus, one compressor. That's my main sound. That's going to be 60% of my guitar sound. Really, all the character is there. I get the bottom, the warmth from the ribbon. I get the mid-range, the attack from the Shure 57. Okay, so we have all our mics set up, and the first thing we're going to do is get some drum sounds. As I mentioned before, this song is a sort of mashup cover of a Talking Heads song. And the band did a demo on their own that's really pretty cool, and they used some cool samples on the demo. So now that we're bringing this into a live band context, we sort of have to replicate the demo sounds a little bit. So I'm going to try to go for a drum sound that's big and roomy and similar to what the band used on the demos. So we have John, our drum tech, out there who's all set, and we're going to start to make some noise. Okay, John, we're in business.
Okay.
Just play a little bit for me, a little bit of a beat for a quick second. So I'm just listening to my room mics really quickly just to see what I got, see how the room sounds. And it's, as I know, Studio 2 here at Sunset Sound to sound. Everything's feeling pretty good. So I'll start to work on my kick drum. There's my inside mic. And usually I got to carve some low mids out of it. It's a little boxy. And I'm going to put in an API graphic, which I always love on kick drum. Okay, I got my inside mic. I'm going to check my outside mic. I always check the phase. And I have a sub-kick mic too. Okay, so now I'm going to open up my snare mics. And there's my top mic. I'm going to brighten it up a little. Now I have two mics on the snare that I showed you out there, one that's a condenser and one that's dynamic. The condenser I usually compress a little bit, so we'll bring that up. And there's a little bit of 1176 compression on that mic. And that could be a little brighter too. Okay, now I'm going to check out my underneath mic. That's a little boxy too. We'll take some mids out of that, brighten it up a taste. And you always have to flip the phase on that mic, which we did. Okay, so we can check the rest of the kit now. Have John hit some toms. We'll check the hi-hat and overheads. Okay, we'll check the overheads. And those could use a little air. And I always listen for them to make sure my snare drum sounds centered, that they feel like they're giving me a good picture of the kit. That's always important to me. And if I feel like it's a little off center, I'll go out and move Mike's taste. And this is pretty good, actually. I might move them just a bit when I go out there. Then we have our mono 47 that's set up in front of the drums that gets a bit of compression. Okay, so that's my mono mic that takes a bit of compression, and I'm going to come over here to the distressor and set that up. I tend to leave it a little slow on the attack side, let the transient come through, and it little bit of breathing, so I set the release kind of fast. But that's going to give me a good punchy overall picture of the kit. And this song I want to be a little aggressive on the drum side, so I might push the preamp a little hotter on that mic. We'll see how that sounds. Okay, so now I'm going to work on my room mics. And I have a close set, and it's a ribbon in front of the kit, and that'll get compressed, and that'll get brightened to taste. Okay, so that's going to get compressed a bit with this Neve compressor here. Then I have a really lo-fi mic out in the middle of the room that'll also get kind of treated and compressed, and I'll get the crack of the snare from that mic. That'll get compressed with a distressor as well. I might be a bit more severe with that because I just want the excitement and the noise out of that. Okay, so I have one Coles ribbon mic about 6 or 8 feet out in front of the kick that I use to kind of get the low end to expand a little bit. It's a Coles 4038. I just like the bottom end on it. And, you know, these are all pieces of the puzzle, so I'll just get some low end from that. And I really don't need any top. It's just supplying a little bit of sustain for the kick. So it just becomes part of my picture. And then here's the lo-fi mid-range mic in the middle of the room. Okay. And then we'll look at our 2 FAR 87s that are in the back of the room. John, ever so patiently, playing the same beat over and over again. This is why I always get the drum tech to do it and not the drummer. So those 87s are going to give me all the length and excitement, and they'll get compressed a bit too. There's the compressor. So here's all my rooms together. Always check the phase. Okay, so let me start to put everything together now. We have a couple other things. I have a little lo-fi ball mic out there that I use to get a little bit more distortion on the kit, and we'll listen to that. Okay, so here's my lo-fi mic that just gives me a little crunch on things. Okay, it's going through a leveler distortion box here. And basically it's kind of just like a distortion device, adding a little crack to the snare. And that gets mixed into the whole picture. Okay, so my overall kick and snare bus, which I'm blending all my mics together on these two buses, they get treated with a Pultec just for overall tone and size. So I'm just going to add a little bit of Pultec in on the kick and snare. Okay, so there's a good start. I'm going to go out and move some microphones, and we're going to check a couple of patches in here, and then we'll be ready to get the band out there.